I believe that all human beings are equal in essence and dignity. None of us is born with special powers that would ontologically distinguish us from others. This view is fundamental for a rational and ethical understanding of humanity. Everyone has the same capacity for growth, error, learning, and transformation. Therefore, the idea that Jesus was a special human being, endowed with supernatural powers from birth, appears to be a narrative constructed for purposes other than the objective description of reality. From a historical analysis, it is possible to see that stories about mythical figures and deified heroes are common across various ancient cultures. Many peoples created myths of spiritual or political leaders who were born of virgins, performed miracles, died and resurrected, or had a special communion with the gods. These stories do not arise out of nowhere. They serve specific functions: strengthening social cohesion, creating behavioral models, legitimizing institutions, and channeling power to certain groups. Early Christianity emerged in a context of enormous political and social tension within a Palestine dominated by the Roman Empire and filled with messianic expectations. It would not be surprising if, to strengthen a nascent movement and attract followers, its early leaders felt the need to craft a powerful narrative around the figure of Jesus. By portraying him as the Son of God, performing miracles, and overcoming death itself, the Christian message became not only religious, but revolutionary and extremely compelling. However, if we analyze the gospel accounts with a critical and comparative eye, we notice huge inconsistencies, story duplications, and clear later edits. There are four canonical gospels with divergent descriptions of the life and deeds of Jesus, which indicates that, far from being a reliable historical record, these texts are theological constructions adapted for different audiences and eras. If the primary goal had been to faithfully record events, a greater level of agreement and objectivity among the accounts would be expected. Another important factor is the historical context of the Gospel's composition. They were written decades after Jesus' death, by people who, in most cases, had never even met him personally. Thus, what we have are interpretations and reworkings of stories transmitted orally, subject to distortions, exaggerations, and ideological adaptations. More than that, the transformation of Jesus into a divine figure perfectly served the interests of building a new religion, especially once Christianity began to institutionalize within the Roman Empire. Making him divine was a way to grant absolute legitimacy to the new faith. If Jesus was God incarnate, his words could not be questioned, his followers were on the right path, and the authority of the church, one which claimed to be the direct heir to his mission, was solidified. Thus, the need for indoctrination appears as a central motivation. By creating myths around miracles, resurrection, and ascension to heaven, Christian leaders could construct a narrative of absolute obedience and faith that warded off rational questioning and criticism. The appeal to the supernatural is a classic strategy in various religions to establish authority and submission, using fear, hell, and hope, salvation, as instruments of control. Therefore, the story of Jesus as a figure endowed with special powers fits perfectly within a historical logic of myth-making for purposes of social manipulation. This does not mean denying the existence of a man named Jesus, a Jewish preacher who spoke of love, justice, and fraternity, but rather separating the possible historical character from the legend built around him. By acknowledging that all human beings are equal, we recognize that no one is born superior to others, whether in physical, intellectual, or spiritual terms. The myth of Jesus' special powers, in this sense, is not only a falsification of reality, but also a dangerous tool of alienation. Accepting this radical equality is, on the contrary, an essential step toward a more just, critical, and free society.